What is up, YouTube? We are back with another episode of Random FPV Interviews. Tonight, I am pleased to have one of my good friends, one of the most innovative members of our FPV community with me. I'm here with Trappy. Trappy, how are you tonight, brother?
Morning for me, man. I like jumped out of the shower. I wrote you like I'm heading to the office, and then I scooted high speed all the way to the office. So yeah, I'm like slowly waking up, but it's a lovely Sunday. So
Do you usually work on Sundays, or are you making a special trip in just for the show?
no, like Sunday is half day for me usually. I mainly stay at home, so I just do like some emails and shit in the mornings until like maybe like 2 3 p.m.
Kind of take it easy on Sundays, right?
Yeah, you gotta have, it's the day of the Lord, right?
Yeah. So, how have things been going for you? I know I'm sure you're busy as hell with the Tango 2 release, right?
Oh yeah, Tango 2 is kicking our balls, and another like the coronavirus thing is like hurting that a little bit. So like most of our upstream suppliers, they are not back yet, or like they're filing to be back. But half the people, like, you got to go through quarantine in China now. So if you move from one city to the other, you got to stay at a place for like a week to see whether you have the virus or not. Um, so like everybody's severely understaffed. Um, yeah, I don't know how that situation is going to pan out over the next like month or so. Because a lot of people are staying at home, obviously, because like nobody wants to go into quarantine, especially if they're not sick, right? Because you might get it
You
there.
might get it from somebody else, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a shit show, man.
Well, I'm glad you're healthy.
Yeah, I mean Hong Kong's fine, right? We got like 30 cases now, which like they're all under control. Like if somebody has it, they're on top of it. Like they quarantine the whole building and check everybody. So it's under control, but it's I don't know. Like half of our people are working from home because they're scared to come to the office. It's more of a panic than like anything else. Like yesterday we went shopping in the supermarket, and you can basically, like, anything that's perishable, you can't find it anymore. It's
Just
super
sold out.
annoying. Like, yeah, it's just everybody's like everybody's thinking the world's gonna end tomorrow, and their purchasing behaviors are, according to that. Like toilet paper, we haven't been able to buy toilet paper for weeks now. So like luckily we had some just by like random luck. But if you hadn't bought toilet paper for like to last you over this period, then you're gonna be showering after you take a shit.
Oh man, that's
Yeah.
crazy. So I think I read somewhere that originally it was like February 10th they were going to send people back, but now it's like the 17th, right?
Yeah, and again, it's like it starts on the 17th, right? So they're like allowing businesses to open on the 17th, but nobody's gonna be open on the 17th. Like if you're getting FPV Crate, the subscription box from Get FPV, we're doing that this week, or well, next week. Um, because like it was supposed to be a TBS box, so we had a lot of shit here for the box, and it was easier for them to like arrange somebody to go to the warehouse and ship us whatever else there is, and it's going to be shipped in the drone drop cases, because like they can't get cardboard boxes, they can't get any of this stuff, and we're just going to like put together a box because it was supposed to ship out like last week, but there was no way to get that done. And so we're going to get it done here next week. So I don't know. It's like everybody's scrambling to get shit started. Yeah, I hope it's going to be. Yeah, I see. Skadoosh says he opens tomorrow, but he has no employees until March. So yeah, that's going to be like most most of the companies in China.
So is the Tango 2 Pro model what you're waiting on?
Um, Well, it's not the Tango True Pro model. We're just waiting on gimbals basically, and the front plastics. Like one of our suppliers was super smart, and he didn't. He just put all the front cases into one box, and they like most of them got scratched. So as soon as there's like a visual defect, we throw it out, and we're waiting for new front covers to come in, and we're waiting for the gimbals to be made, and yeah.
Damn.
We got like a whole like home factory setup going right now. So like because we have staff that are in Shenzhen, and they can work, right, but they can't go to the warehouse. So we arranged like parts to be brought to their home. So because they got nothing to do anyway, like they're just sitting at home playing cards, right?
Right.
So they're like, we have a couple of people that are putting together gimbals instead of from the factory floor. They're doing it at home. So yeah.
That's awesome. They're that dedicated, though.
Well, they want to make money. Like nobody's getting paid if they're not working, right? I
Right.
mean, they're not my employees, like, but they're like my supplier said, like, hey man, we got like 10 people, they're ready to go. They're super motivated. Let's do it. So yeah, I can't. I'm happy for them, that they can work at least, because like Shenzhen is super expensive to stay, right? So like if you, I don't know, like you can. I guess there's no such place in the U.S. Maybe like maybe San Francisco, where you like, if once you start having no income, you're like super close to like getting kicked out, right?
Right. That kid's a problem.
Yeah,
Real quick, I
yeah,
want to give
man.
some shouts out to the chat. We've got 507RC, 608 FPV, Antoine, Double A, Doug's Spahik. I hope I didn't butcher his name there. John Hart, Freaking FPV, Plummet, Skadoosh in the house. We got Snoopy RC, Tony Briz, Vampire, Hawkeye just showed up. We got a couple donations from Plummet and Freakin' and Matt. We really appreciate all your donations. Helps keep the show going. And you guys drop the questions in the chat if you've got any questions for Trappy. I'll do my best to get them answered for you guys. So take us back to when. What's your very first experience with FPV? How did you find the hobby?
I watched a video from a guy called VR Flyer. I don't know if you still know him. That was like back in the RC groups days. So VR Flyer was a Canadian dude. He works for Bombardier, I think, and he posted a video called Bromont Golf Club, and there he kind of explains his FPV rig, and that got shared. It went a little viral, like it had like, I think like 50,000 views or something, and I was one of those. And I saw that, and then I immediately went to Range Video. I guess people don't know that guy anymore either. He's the dude that bought Headplay, the big, the super big box goggles that were like
Yeah.
popular in 2015. I went on there, bought a whole bunch of shit, put it together. It immediately smoked, and then it was like 6 months worth of like I had to save because I was a piss poor student. He Range Video actually like replaced me a couple parts that I fried. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, that's how I started. Just like putting shit on RC planes that I had lying around from when I was younger, and kind of recycled those to get in the air. And I don't know, it just like it went more and more extreme every day, because like I have these mountains and I wanted to reach the top of them. So like we had to upgrade gear, get new antennas, hack the shit out of everything, because nothing worked back in those days. Like we didn't have FPV video transmitters. We had like video transmitter modules that were built into baby monitors, and then you had to like rip them out and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how we started, and just like try to push for range. That's always been my thing. Like the further we could go, the cooler it was, and yeah.
Do you remember your first quad?
My first quad, holy shit. Yeah, I do. That was from a French store. I think I don't think they still exist. Because I was like a little popular with the wings stuff, right? So we had like the wing videos going. Back then, like popular meant like that you got 2,000 views. So that was like that was the best you could hope for. And so those guys sent me my first free shit, right? And so that guy sent me like a quad, fully built with KK or no MK multicopter from Germany with like a board like that, or multi-wii or whatever. I
Yeah,
don't even
multi-wii.
remember.
I remember.
It was super shitty, and that was like before the DJI NASA came out or whatever that was, and the Wukong, and like those components that then finally allowed you to like actually like hover without like getting a seizure. Yeah, but it was a super shitty like uh the props kept falling off because we didn't have lock nuts back then, and there were only like I don't there was like there used to be this thing where it was like clockwise and counterclockwise motors, right? Because the nuts wouldn't hold on. So that was like an intermediate solution before we didn't have that. So like we could never fly long range because like every second flight, the one prop would fall off somewhere. So that was my first experience with quads. It wasn't that great, but immediately I felt like it was different because you could stop. Wings were always like you just had to like you were if you stopped you stalled and you died, right? So quads kind of gave a new perspective. So that's when we started working on the TBS Discovery, which were like several iterations.
What was TBS's very first product?
The TBS Core. We have the Core Pro now, which is like a full graphics OSD. But back then, like when we started out, the TBS Core was basically a glorified Pulolu. So it was a Pulolu on a board that did 5 volts and 12 volts. That was it. That was our first product. And it was to kind of, we used the Immersion RC Easy OSD back then, and that didn't have a voltage regulator. So it would only pass through the voltage, which meant that you had to use the Immersion RC video transmitters, which I didn't like. So we were using the Lawmate video transmitters back then because they had way more range. And it was 2.4 versus 5.8. So like the 5.8 sucked back then, right? Like it was super bad. So we were using 2.4, and yeah, like the Lawmate video transmitters didn't have a 5 volt out; they needed a 5 volt in. So it was kind of like this super weird way of getting everything working. The cameras needed 12 volts. The Easy OSD only passed through the voltage, so we needed to like cut the voltage circuit, provide 12 volt to the left, 5 volt to the right, and that's what the that's what the TBS Core was basically.
So you were solving a problem, basically.
Yeah, we were like making accessories for Immersion RC back then. That's how we started out.
Double A wants to know how TBS came to be. So how did, because it's not just you, obviously.
Yeah, it's 3 guys. So Chris Dunkel and Remo Messina. They're also on Facebook. So we 3. Well, I guess it's common knowledge now. Graupner Germany just went bankrupt like a couple of days ago. like 2 weeks ago. But they were already struggling like 10 years ago, right? Or 7 years ago. So that was the first time when they really like, when they went bankrupt. Um, yeah, it was, yeah. And Remo and Chris used to do the Swiss branch of Graupner. So they did all the repairs, they did all the warranties, they handled all the customer support, that sort of stuff. And in their spare time, they also like design products, not for Graupner, but for other companies. So yeah, when the Graupner business tanked, they were looking for something new to do, kind of. And I was like making videos, and we had these ideas for these products, and we were flying FPV together, and we noticed that there was a shortage of like certain things that Immersion RC didn't want to make. I mean, obviously they didn't want to make something compatible with other video transmitters because they had their own video transmitters to sell. So we were like, okay, well, we want to go this way and we want to do it like that way. So we made these accessories. We started, just adding to the experience of FPV, basically. So we took what was out there, what we liked, we put it onto drones. We also sold like RTF kits that did pretty well in the beginning because nobody knew where to get everything from one source. So we had a lot of people just come in and just say like, okay, I want to fly FPV, give me the Fat Shark goggles, give me the charger, give me the batteries, give me the everything, right? Just, I want to get one box and go home and fly. So yeah, that's how we basically came to be. We were more like a solutions provider. We weren't really an FPV store because we were more like focused on the engineering and on the innovation side. But yeah.
So you guys just got together. You were a bunch of guys flying together and decided you're going to solve some problems and provide some resources.
Yeah, it's the same concept of what we're doing right now. Is we make what we want to fly. That's it, right? So whenever like we get pissed about something, like the most recent example, the Tango 2, even the Tango 1, we were like pissed that the remote controls were taking up so much space. So I try to like combine the video goggles and the remote control, which was a stupid idea. But for the Tango 2, we finally like figured it out, and we just made like the smallest possible controller that was still like full size, or still gave you that full size feel. Because of course you can get small controllers, but then you'll feel like playing PlayStation, right? Without the precision and the low latency and all that stuff. So yeah, it's always been, we're looking at things that we want, and or like, maybe let me give you another example of like the TBS Discovery that we made. That was like back when quads like started to slowly take off. People were using the F450s, is what they were called, from DJI, which were just like two base plates, and you had four arms, like four plastic arms that were
flame
like
wheel,
injection
right?
molded. Yeah, exactly, the flame wheel. So we had all this, but it was super awkward to get FPV gear on it. It was like slightly too small. The batteries wouldn't fit inside, so you had to like put them underneath, which meant that the takeoff was shaky. And there were like, just like all these little issues with it. So what we did was then we took like a dead cat quad design, and basically built that into the flame wheel. Yeah, and that also like did super well, just because there were no other FPV solutions for it, and everybody had the flame wheels either for sale or lying around because they got them for free with their flight controllers. So all we needed to sell was the top and the bottom PCB, and we had like the integrated wiring, so you could plug in your camera. We had the core, that you could solder into the board, that will provide the 5 volts for your VTX, the 12 volts for your camera. And then, yeah, you put in the DJI stuff, you put in your immersion RC, easy UHF, and you were good to go.
So it kind of evolved then from the core, and then I guess you started making video transmitters, right?
Yeah, we've always, how do I say this? We've always been nagging certain vendors about like making shit. Like, we didn't want to make video transmitters, but we kept telling vendors that used to make or that still make video transmitters, like, get your shit together, make it smaller, make it more output power, like fix this, fix that, like get rid of the fucking dip switches, all these like things. We kept telling them and they wouldn't do it. So eventually we're like, all right, fine, we'll just do it, fuck it. Same thing with the long range systems. I can't remember how many times we told certain vendors to get their shit together, and they just like, it was just like talking to a deaf person.
Brick
So
wall.
eventually we were like, yeah, exactly. So eventually we're like, all right, fuck it, we'll just make our own then. And that's the Crossfire, right? So those were kind of the frustrating parts, of this experience, because like we wanted to build this ecosystem with everybody together, like figure out like, okay, you make that part better and we make that part better. But a lot of the vendors back in those days were more focused on market share or sales numbers or whatever it was that they were focused on, rather than like, you know, staying in their corner and perfecting that, like doing the Japanese, right? Like the Japanese way is like figuring out something that you're good at and just perfecting that over the course of like 10 years, right? So that like by the end you're the fucking master of, I don't know, whatever, analog video transmitters, whatever. Yeah, so that was not the plan for a lot of people. So they wanted to like have, you know, be big in the quad world, be big in the wing world, be big in the antenna world, be big in the video transmitter world, whatever, and just like, you know, knock out competitors left and right. And I don't know, we always like try to like push them to fix their old shit rather than like make other stuff. But I guess it wasn't supposed to be.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, the Unify is the industry standard for video transmitters, so you did a good job of perfecting it.
Yeah, it took us, I would say, over 2 years to make something that worked. I mean, we had like, luckily nobody like remembers our failures, like the TBS Boss, the TBS Greenhorn, the TBS Rookie. Those are like super bad attempts at making, like, you know, it was just us like brainstorming and putting products out, and luckily people bought them, otherwise we would be broke right now. But they were basically funding the R&D for the Unify Pro.
So Quad Farm wants to know where you're from.
I'm from Switzerland originally, Switzerland and Austria, but I grew up in Singapore. So a lot of people say I have like a somewhat American accent, because I just like, I hung out with American kids in Singapore.
Interesting. Let's see here. So Double A wants to know, is it in the future to do a black sheep dongle?
For Sims,
I
I
would
guess.
guess that's what he's referring to,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, we actually got a software solution in the works, so you won't have to buy a dongle. So the idea is basically to go through the Wi-Fi, because UDP is fairly low latency.
That makes total sense. I didn't even think about that it has the Wi-Fi built in.
Yeah. Because that way it will work with your Tyrannus. If you have the Crossfire module, it will just work with everything that has Crossfire built in, right? So it'll work on the Tango, it'll work on your QX7, it'll work on everything.
That'll be sweet. Is that something you guys have started on, or is that just kind of an idea in the idea phase?
No, it's we have started on it. We have made sure that it works. Like we've tested it. The only issue is the TBS agent right now is not stable, so we got to make it stable first before
Gotcha.
we can roll out all these new features.
Where do you see the FPV industry in the next few years, and is the industry growing? Asked Tony.
No, it hasn't been growing for years. So like this myth that FPV was going to grow forever, pretty much. I mean, it's still like out there somewhere. Like a couple of the, I'm not going to go name names, but a couple of the weirdos are still saying it's growing. It hasn't been growing for the last 3 years. It's actually been on a pretty steady decline. But yeah, I guess it's just, it's expansion and contraction. It's just how it works. I mean, to be completely honest, apart from the DJI digital system, nothing really new came to FPV in the last 5 years. It's just been, how to say, like a slow iteration, a gradual improvement, which is important. I mean, if you compare the Crossfire, I guess we launched it like 5 years ago or 4 years ago. From like when we launched it to now, the latency has come down to like a third. The refresh rate has increased. The stability, the features, like everything has grown exponentially. So, but yeah, that there's not been anything like, fucking mind blowing. I mean, if you look at like, I don't know, like action cameras, you've had, from the time when the GoPro 2 came out to right now, like you have 360 degrees, you got real steady, you got like stabilization built in. Like there's been so many improvements in that field, versus quads. Yeah, we got Betaflight 4 point something now, but I would argue like to maybe more than 50% of the people, it's not going to feel too much different than Clean Flight did 5 years ago. At least to me, it doesn't.
Antoine wants to know: is there any government help for things like when the shutdown, when you guys are quarantined? Is there got any type of like government assistance?
Well, there is for certain industries. I know ours isn't on the fucking radar. We've been pushing the governments for months now, but Hong Kong is, I don't know, it's not what it used to be, right? So, like in my opinion, like China fucked up Hong Kong, but China is way better than Hong Kong, which is weird, right? Because like the local councils here, they have no say basically. It's all like controlled from China. So that's like one thing. Like they might want to get stuff done, but maybe they can't. On the other hand, it's just like complete lack of competence. So like, for example, we sell black shirts, and the protest movements use black shirts as like to signal that they're part of the protest movement. So we can't get black shirts into Hong Kong. And like, we don't sell to protesters. We just want to sell like to our customers across, and we have not been able to get black shirts into Hong Kong.
That's crazy.
And most government people didn't even know that this was an issue. They're like, well, just don't sell black shirts. It's like, motherfucker, we're team black sheep. Like, what the fuck? I'm not going to change my company name just because you feel like scared by, a fabric color. Like, what the fuck? um, so it's been like little things like this, or just like, like drone parts. I mean, I guess, of course, the governments are scared of drones being used, right? I mean, nobody, like in the protest movement, short of like filming filming the cops, nobody's really done anything with drones. It's not like they put like C4 on it and blew cops up or something. But it's been hard, like, to get drone parts into Hong Kong, right? So like, that's all we sell. so you gotta like discuss with, every time you place orders for drone parts, which is like on the daily, you got to talk with customs agents and like, no, we're not selling it in Hong Kong, we're like a distributor, like, and they, oh yeah, prove it. It's like, well, go on our fucking website. Like, you can't even, if you select Hong Kong as a shipping option, you can't even order, because we can't ship to Hong Kong. Like, no
Right.
company here for some fucking reason ships to Hong Kong from Hong Kong. So all these like little things have been super annoying. And on top of that, like, for example, the tourism industry, like restaurants, like anything that has to do with shopping malls, like if you have a shop in a shopping mall, anything that has to do with like people being there and buying shit, the government recognizes that they're suffering, and they support them. Like, billions of fucking dollars are going into that sector so that, that the real estate market doesn't crash. Because if the real estate market crashes, then the government doesn't have any source of income anymore, because they don't really, like, Hong Kong doesn't collect a lot of taxes, so they kind of offset that by, collecting like stamp duties on rent and on all of this shit. So if that crashes, then they have no income anymore. So they're like propping up that sector so that it doesn't crash. But yeah, like if you say like, hey, we're an engineering company here, and we would like to get something as well, they were like, why? Go to China. So anyway, that's my 5-minute rant on that. But
Is the quarantine like enforced by the government?
oh, there's nothing, right? Like, the government just suggests people to stay at home, and to handle it with their employers, whether they can stay at home or not. So people who are like legit scared and who don't have to be in the office, like, our customer support only needs to be here once a week, realistically, right? I mean, everything else is handled through Facebook, email, Skype,
Right.
whatever. As like most of the software engineers, they just got to come in to like fix some hardware stuff, and then they can, go back home and work from there. So we actually had to upgrade our internet line because a lot of people are like remote desktoping in. So, so like all the computers are working, but nobody's sitting on the desks.
Interesting.
So yeah, we don't have the quarantine shit, but I don't know. I don't know how China does it, but we were more affected by like the protests, which have been ongoing for 9 months, right? And they've like completely decimated the tourism, like airlines, like everything is just complete like fucked up. And it's obviously it has impacted us as well, right? But the issue is that all the other sectors are somewhat getting compensated for it, and we're like, I think we're like one of 10 engineering companies in Hong Kong that are still left. Like, everybody else is left to China. So like, we get nothing, absolutely nothing.
Tony Briz wants to know what is going to be the next big thing in FPV. What new tech or innovation will propel it?
Well, to me, it's going to be the TBS Cloud. I don't think people fully realize the potential of it. Obviously, like now with all this remote ID stuff going on, everybody's like, oh yeah, can you do remote ID with it? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. But that's like such a small subset of what we want to do. Yeah, so it's gonna, to me, it's gonna change drones like multiplayer changed gaming, or just like internet changed gaming.
Can you
Like
talk a
think,
little bit about the cloud for people that are watching that maybe they've not heard of it? Can you explain about it a little bit for us?
um, so well, the TBS Cloud, in essence, is a telemetry sharing platform that is built into the Crossfire. So think of it as your Tyrannus telemetry screen that synchronizes with the internet, if you want to do that, right? And that is built into the Crossfire. It's built into the TVS Fusion, which is your goggle module. It's built into the Tango 2, and it's going to be like rolled out onto a different like class of products that are going to be coming out throughout this year. So when all of these can talk together, like the first feature that we implemented to kind of give people an idea is that if you change your VTX settings, that means like your output power, your channels, anything of that sort, it's going to synchronize to the Fusion, or vice versa. Like up, that's again like a configuration thing. So you can set the Fusion to follow or to lead on your VTX channels. So you can change your channels on your goggles, and your VTX will change alongside it.
To have that function working, does the smart audio line have to be connected to a Crossfire receiver, or can it be connected to a normal UART on a flight controller and that still work?
Currently, it has to be on the Crossfire receiver.
Okay.
So that's until like one of the big pushes that we're doing is to push like to make CRSF, not Crossfire, CRSF, the protocol, open source. We hope that we can get it done this year, and once that is open source, it can be rolled out into beta flight. So then it basically doesn't matter where you connect your CRSF devices.
Oh, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So obviously, like right now, the TVS Cloud is the functionality is pretty limited. Plus, you need internet connectivity, which makes like only a limited amount of sense, especially like in countries like the US where you don't have cell coverage everywhere. But yeah, the idea is not just to synchronize your devices, but also to synchronize between pilots. So that's when the multiplayer thing is going to come in, right? Like for example, for long range, it would be really cool if you would have an artificial map of where you are in relation to your buddies, for example. Just like little things like that are super easy to do with that tech. Just because you have access to everybody, well, not to everybody's, but you can like create groups and you can share the telemetry between the devices.
So, speaking on remote ID, I know that the current NPRM, you've said that your hardware is compatible. Can you explain to us how that would work? Would we just need to install a GPS on the quad and then have everything linked up to the cloud?
Yeah, you basically, I mean, the way that I understand it right now, the rules are not out, so it's kind of, you know, it's kind of like guessing.
Right.
Um, Basically, TBS would have to authorize or get authorized and have the Crossfire technology authorized with the FAA. How that's going to work, we don't know yet. The current NPRM doesn't allow for like any of the home built quads, right? I'm hoping that's going to change because otherwise there's no way that any of us can be legal. But let's assume that that shit is sorted. Then you basically just connect the GPS to your Crossfire receiver. You enable the TBS cloud, and you allow to share your data with the FAA. And then you basically upload as your telemetry stream comes in, it goes up to the FAA's website somehow. All of that is like super foggy because we don't know what is required in your approval process. to
Right.
become like this data provider. There's no like protocol or specification. It's all going to be like announced over the next 2 to 3 years. But the basic ingredient that you need for it is to be able to stream GPS information into the internet. Like if you don't have that, then you cannot get this like level 2 remote ID stuff to work, right? There's like 3 levels. Like one is you only fly on AMA fields, so you don't need anything. The second one is you share the GPS information somehow, which is what Crossfire would be allowing you to do. And then the third one is you have an active transponder on your drone, which is what we've been doing with Flarm, but I don't think Flarm is going to be approved. Maybe it will be. Um, uh, but that will require you to like be able to receive and transmit air traffic control data.
And you've had that for a while.
Yeah, we've had that for a while. Because to me, flying long range without like being aware of the airspace around you is just stupid, right? Because there's no way that you can hear an aircraft when you're 20 miles out.
Right.
And we're flying like super close to ridges and shit, so it's possible that there's an aircraft just on the other side of the ridge, which we can't see. So the Flarm thing, like, to me has been super helpful for long range flying, because in Switzerland, Flarm is mandatory for private, like, it's not really private aircraft, but for aircraft that fly like non-commercial jetliners, basically. Everything that's not a commercial jetliner needs to have Flarm. A lot of paragliders have been adding it voluntarily because the gliders have it, and gliders are super hard to see because they're like super slim, profile. So while you're flying, you would have like a helicopter go 500 meters over you, and the radar pops up on your FPV screen, and you can see like, holy shit, there's a helicopter. The altitude differential, like here's its flight path. It's helpful information. Plus, the helicopter knows that there's a drone down there, which is also really helpful because then he knows like not to go too close, just to stay out of, just both people stay out of everybody's way.
And how big is the Flarm module? Let's say that was something that the FAA was to go with. Are the modules big or are they pretty small?
No, it's just you need a TBS GPS, so you need our GPS for it because Flarm requires like the I'm gonna say legit GLONASS, not GLONASS, U-Blocks modules, not the ones that claim to be legit. So you need that, and you need a Crossfire diversity receiver, because one of the antennas will then turn into a beacon.
Right. Plummet says he flies Flight 1 Falco X and he would be curious of your thoughts on it. Have you had any experience with that?
Sorry, what?
The Flight 1 Falco X?
I have no experience on it. I only fly Betaflight, but it's not out of like, I just don't have the time to like compare and stuff. I know Preston, the guy that like codes Flight 1, and I know he does really cool shit. So I'm guessing it's good. Like Flight 1 is all about like reducing the features and increasing the performance, which is kind of like the opposite of what Betaflight is doing. I'm not saying they're not improving the performance, but Betaflight is like tries to be compatible with everything and like build all of the features inside, which it's a perfect combo to have people who focus on, like, you got KISS and Flight 1 on the one hand that focus on ease of use and like reducing the amount of features necessary. And then you got Betaflight, who is like for 90% of the people will do like pretty much everything, right? You can have, I don't know how many receiver protocols it supports, but it's more than 10. And you can do so many mixer settings and filter settings and all of this stuff. So it's really awesome to have. You know, if you're more a tinkerer, that's what you prefer. Or if you have like devices that don't work with the Flight Ones and the Kisses of the world, then you use Betaflight. So I don't know. I've never flown Flight One. I've flown Kiss once, but I'm not good enough to tell the difference. So to me, it's the differences are more in like how their philosophy or how they approach
Right.
making stuff.
Snoopy wants to know, do you have any plans for a brushless Whoop flight controller with built-in crossfire?
Yeah, I know that we've been hammered on this, especially since the Tango 2 came out. So it's something that we're actively discussing. I think the issue is people don't realize the cost that's going to be involved, because crossfire receivers by themselves are not cheap, and then putting that onto a Whoop board is gonna change like the price class of Whoops, right? So it's a lot cheaper to buy a Whoop board and put crossfire on it than to have a Whoop board with crossfire on it.
I'm following you. So John Hart would like to know on the thumbnail we used for the show tonight, is that an old cell phone on the side of the goggles?
No. That's how we used to fly, man. That's the power or the battery module for the cinemizers. So we used to fly. We didn't switch to Fat Shark until the Dominator 2, which was like the first white goggle from Fat Shark. We flew Cinemizer, where we actually had OLED, like what you have right now on the HDOs. That's what we had in 2015, 2014. Yeah, I think the Cinemizer OLED came out in 2014. But they were Carl Zeiss, right? So you paid for the pleasure, and then you had to like, you just got them, and then you had to like tear them apart and put them into ski goggles, just so that they would fit on your face without massive pains. But yeah, the thing on the side is it's a power bank kind of to power your goggles. Plus, it had the video input from the receiver.
So you had to hack away and make your own goggles back then.
Yeah. If you wanted the best, then that's what you had to do. And
Do
then
you remember
Fat
how
came
much
out with,
those Carl Zeiss units cost?
they were about twice as expensive as Fat Shark. So
Wow.
I mean, back in the days, they were like 500, 600 bucks, which now that's what Fat Sharks cost, right? But you got to compare it with the times. 10 years ago, 500 bucks was a lot more than it is now.
Yeah, a significant amount more. 608 FPV wants to know, what's your favorite product to make so far?
Favorite product to make? Well, it's always the most recent one, because that's what you're most invested in.
What you're putting your heart and soul into, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, in the recent like 12 to 18 months, we've been working a lot with ecosystems rather than like specific products. So it's all coming together, right? You got the cloud, you got the crossfires, you got the Tango, and like it's all merging together. The video transmitters, everything's so maybe it's not that, maybe it's not a specific product, maybe it's like the whole thing working together finally in a very concise way. Yeah,
A cohesive ecosystem.
yes, exactly. So it's like making the crossfire better makes the fusion better, which is so awesome, right? Or making the fusion better makes the Unify Pro better.
Hell yeah. So any idea on how long until the upgraded Fusion hardware release? I know the quarantine's obviously going to, the coronavirus has severely affected that. But do you have any
Yeah,
idea at all how much longer we're going to have to wait?
no, no, it's that's what's holding it up, pretty much. I mean, we had to go before Chinese New Year, so there was like an intermission in production because of Chinese New Year, and then Corona happened, and then yeah.
Big oily guy wants to know if Wayne is really your boss.
No, I have no boss.
507 says, "What is a product you wish you could make but don't have the resources to make it happen?"
Oh, HD FPV. That's an easy one. Yeah.
Just make HD.
Like, I mean, we had an HD FPV product in 2014, 2015. But it was just too expensive. Like transmitter receiver pair was like $1,300 to a customer. So it doesn't make sense, right? The technology is fairly easy. Like you got to compress, and you got to compress fast. So you got to put it on a chip, and to put it on a chip, you need $50 million. Nobody in this industry has $50 million. So
Tony Briz wants to know what's the biggest threat to FPV,
the constant drama. That's it.
right?
Yeah, it's I mean, you can see the growth of FPV, and like when it stopped is when drama and personality started.
Stirring the pot for sales.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I draw a lot of parallels to like US politics, right? Because like it used to be about issues, and now it's about parties. And same thing was with FPV. It used to be about 2.4 VTXs versus 5.8, and now it's this side versus that side. And yeah, that's as far as I want to go on this. Like we all know who started it. We all know like who makes money off it. So just, don't support that.
Right? Yeah. 507 says, any advice for decreasing drama? I would just say don't support the companies that you see out there that are, pushing the drama, and just try to stay out of it.
Yeah, just ignore it. I mean, it's if there's a clickbait title on YouTube, the best way that you can prevent that from happening is not click on it. Same thing with like if there's any kind of like discussion going on about this versus that, or this side versus that side, just don't participate. I've been trying to stay out of it. It's super hard because like our business is sometimes affected, and I got a comment as as the boss of TBS, but um, yeah, we've been trying to stay out of it for the last 6 to 12 months now, and I don't know if it's worked out or not, but I certainly sleep a lot better
Right?
um, than I did 12 months ago. But it's still not like it still pops up here and there, and it's super annoying. But I don't know. We're trying to work through it. You know.
Quadrophenia wants to know, does the development of open source components such as OpenTX or Betaflight keep up with the speed of TBS engineers in product development, or is there a bottleneck?
Um, it's different, right? Because it's um, if I want to get a feature developed, I can focus all of our resources on it. So it's a lot more of a focused approach. Versus if the Betaflight guys want to get a feature developed, they have to find somebody who's interested in making that happen. So it's kind of more, and interests are going to be different, right? I mean, I think there's like 200 Betaflight developers that do parts here and there. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're slow, because I mean OpenTX and Betaflight are like the reference, so they've stayed ahead of all the closed source solutions out there. Um, on the other hand, like I don't think you could make an open source Crossfire, because I can focus the features way more into like a bigger picture, whereas that is harder to do with um, with other things.
Right. Here's
Yeah.
a
But
go ahead.
I have nothing against open source, right? Like a lot of people are saying like I'm TBS because we don't make open source products. We have something against open source. It's just it's a different business model. Um, and if basically if you have engineers on payroll, you can't make open source because you got to pay for them, and open source doesn't pay engineers, if that makes sense. Like open source pays for, if you have a business that is making open source products, the way you go about it is you hire a manufacturing company to make that product for you, right? So you pay, I don't know, $1,000 for the layout and of your flight controller, and then you pay another $1,000 for having that made, and then you sell it for a super low price. Whereas with closed source products, you pay a lot of money in the engineering. You come up with a product. It might sell, it might not sell, and then obviously you gotta add the markup to pay for all of that.
That makes sense. Plus, you got a lot more focus on what you're working on when you're closed source. You've got
Yeah,
everything in house, so you don't have to stress like too many cooks.
yeah, and you don't have to compete with your own stuff, right? Like if I made the greatest Betaflight board ever, it would be on Banggood within a month. Right? So I can't invest my time and resources to make the greatest Betaflight board ever. It's always going to be just little improvements on the hardware side.
Quadform wants to know if it's easy to get weed there.
It is, but it's not good stuff and it's super expensive.
Corey Corza wants to know, does China and Hong Kong have hectic drone regulations like the FAA and CASA are trying to implement?
No, no. We have one guy in Hong Kong that's responsible for the whole of Hong Kong and for enforcing all drone regulations and approvals and everything. So technically you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Kind of like a free for all.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's rules, and if you piss somebody off enough, then you're gonna get into trouble. But until then, you're good.
Akira wants to know, is TBS working on some digital video system or will you stay analog?
No, I mean that's what we. If anybody that's gonna make a digital video system that's from the FPV industry is gonna go bankrupt trying to get it done. So that's just the nature of the beast. It's way too big. We gotta wait for the chips to become available to like general consumer companies before we can try and make something. And I don't even think that's ever going to happen. Like maybe with 5G, but I don't know. And if you look at the quality of the HD systems right now, and the amount of money that went into it, and the amount of money that is going to be earned from it, there's like if you want to lose $50 million or $40 million, then it's a cool project to do. It's a super awesome project to do, but it's just not something that we can do. It
Takes a
was
heavy
like
hit.
it was one of the things that pissed me off the most, because the solutions were right there, right? Like it's not that any company that has made a digital system has like completely blown our minds with what is capable, what is possible. It's just that you needed the money to get there, and the trajectory that FPV was on was going to enable that. And then all of this shit happened, right? Like all this drama stuff happened. And I just like, I remember when it was clear that that's what was gonna like, that it was gonna plateau and that it was gonna go downhill, and that certain people just wouldn't get on to the table and like work with the other manufacturers. It was a super bummer because we knew like, oh shit, we're gonna be stuck here. Like there's no way that we can get to the next level with the size that we're at. So yeah, that was, but that's been like, that's been forgotten 3 years ago. So like 3 years ago, I was super pissed about that. But yeah, what can you do?
Well, I'm glad to see you've made it out unscathed, you could say.
Oh yeah, I mean, life's always going to go on, right? I mean, it's never, I don't know. I don't subscribe to like the no future kind of thing. Like there's always something that you can do. And it's business, so you know, if like nobody's gonna care, right? If you have a burger shop and people don't like it anymore, then you gotta adjust. And it's the same thing with TBS and with FPV and with everything. Like we used to be in the wings business. Wing business didn't go so well, so we switched to quads. And we used to be doing like, our main business was video transmitters and antennas. And then we were like, well, it's a little bit one-sided, and like these guys are not making the long range systems well, so let's try and make long range systems. And then the whole thing with FrSky happened. Like, well, these guys are trying to like push us out of the market, so we got to make remote controls now. So you know, TBS has always been adjusting to external factors, and digital FPV is just another one of them.
With the new FAA restrictions around the corner, do you predict there will be a jump in micro whoop FPV technology?
No, I mean, there's already been a jump. I don't think that the regulations have any impact on the industry whatsoever. At least not our part of the industry. Like what we have been doing has been illegal since it started, right? And the only one to go to court for it was me. So I don't think people fully realize, like, it's the FAA is just try to make regulations for like not us, so that companies who are way bigger than us can legally do what we can never do legally. So we're not in the picture, and I don't know. Of course, like a lot of people are worried now because obviously, like big FPV events like multi GPIO and shit like that. They're going to be impacted because you can't make an official event with illegal activity, right?
Right.
But that's about the extent of it. Like it has never been on my mind, not even once, the regulations that I'm going to break, or it have never influenced how I fly at all. Like if I'm in class A airspace or class B airspace or class C airspace, I don't care. I'm going to adjust it. I'm going to fly safely. Yes. But it's not going to change the way, like, oh shit, I can't fly here because there's an airport here. Like, no, fuck it. Like, where are the planes? I'm going to avoid them, and that's how I'm going to fly. So, I mean, obviously, if it's legal, it's preferred, but I don't care.
You fly.
And the more ridiculous the rules get, the more you're inclined to like not care about them. So I think it's a super big missed opportunity on the side of the FAA to actually bring FPV pilots or RC pilots in general to the table and to do it like in a responsible way. But if they're going to make rules that just basically make all kinds of like DIY hacking illegal, then everybody's going to be illegal and nobody's going to give a fuck about any rules. And they're not going to have the power to enforce it at all.
Has there ever been something you tried to make that didn't work out, or something you were disappointed in when it was finished? Asked Scarecrow.
So if I'm disappointed when it's finished, it's not going to be sold. And that's about 70% of our projects. So the stuff you see is the stuff that made it. There are so many like failed projects in TBS, but to me, that's just the learning experience. So we make a whole bunch of products that have never made it to market, that were like almost ready to sell, basically, and then we just said, no, this is not good enough. Let's redo it.
Simon Saucy wants to know, will T2 gimbals be available for replacement purchase?
Yes, but it's part of the whole supply issues right now.
Right. Can't get them right now. This is an interesting one from Airheaded Aviator. He says, how is Trappy's perception on the FPV community being either a participation industry or a consumer industry?
Oh, it's 100% participation. 100%. Which is what's really cool about it. Like, this is why we have short plug like the TBS Lounge and all of this shit, right? I mean, Apple doesn't have...
Link in the description.
Link in the description, yeah.
Yeah. It's already there.
So, yeah, this... we want to talk with our customers. We want to have our customers influence what we make. And it's always surprising to us, like, or it's always cool for us when we get surprised by our customers. Like, for example, with the Tango 2 that just came out, we sent this to, I don't know how many people. More than a dozen people had a Tango 2 before it came out. And the comments that we got on the launch were like completely different than any of the comments that we have ever received from our test pilots. So it was like a complete surprise that like the lack of multi-protocol module was such a big thing to our customers, or that I don't know, they said that it looks like a toy. That's more like an issue with how we did the photos, I guess, because nobody that got it says that it's like a toy, and like the screen was too small, and like all these comments, we never heard about them from our test pilots, because they were just not an issue to our test pilots, right? So it's always like super interesting to see what people come up with, and obviously being open source products and all these kind of things makes it easier, because if there's enough demand for something, then it's going to change either by the customer or we provide it. So yeah. Anyway, like, just rambling, but it's to me, like, that's what, in a sense, like, we're pilots, so we are making products for us, so it's kind of like a participation by definition. But it's always cool to like go out on, like, show up on multi-GPIO and show people, like, here's the Tango, what do you think about it? And just put it into people's hands and then receive their feedback and see what they say. Whereas you could never do that, I think, in a consumer business.
Right.
Yeah. And there's just a question, like, you never heard about the screen being too small. No, because it's not. Like, once you have it in your hands, you can stretch it out as far as you want and you can read it. It just looks small, but it's actually like, nobody complained about the X-Lite screen being too small, and our resolution is like 4 times higher.
Yeah, I can read it like I wouldn't say across the room, but I can read it like at arm's length, no problem.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about the resolution. It's not about the size, right? Um, so yeah.
So the Tango 2 took like what, 2 years basically?
No, way more. Um, I can show prototypes from 2012.
Wow.
Yeah. So the first Tango 2 was, yeah, I think we made it after we made the Discovery, the first one. Like before we started on the Discovery Pro, we started on the Tango 2. But it's just it's so hard to put full size gimbals into a remote of that size. Um, yeah, I like somewhere like 2 years ago we said like it's impossible. Let's just stop. But then I made the mistake of talking about it, and then everybody was like, "You got to get this done. You got to get this made."
I love mine. Thing's awesome.
Oh yeah, cool. You got one.
Oh yeah. And the screen's plenty big.
Yeah, it's. I don't. I mean, yes, like I've had. I'm not going to say old people, but older persons or persons of age say like it's a little small to read for me because I don't have good eyesight. But if you don't have like massive astigmatism or like if you're super farsighted or something, then it's not going to be an issue. So yeah,
So
give it a try. I'm pretty sure there's somebody by now in your area that has one. So give it a try, and if you haven't yet, and look at it, and then tell me if it's too big or too small.
507 wants to know if DJI came to you and asked to better integrate Crossfire and DJI, would you consider working with them?
Well, we've thought about it, but DJI doesn't really have to integrate Crossfire. Um, Crossfire integrates with a flight controller, and DJI integrates with a flight controller. And they like we integrate very well with the flight controller, and DJI integrates really well with the flight controller. So if you have a DJI system and that's what you prefer, you can use Crossfire just fine. And actually, I have not heard of any like person that has switched over to DJI systems that is not using um, like I will say like an RC, right? Like a remote control. Because the DJI thing is just like it's gimbals. You don't have settings. You got to do it through the goggles, and it's I don't know. You don't have OpenTX and all these features that people want to do the tinkering that they want to do. They're not in there. So most of the people are still using um, their old remotes that they were used to.
Tony wants to know what is TBS doing to protect FPV and help limit government overreach from the FAA?
Well, we're working with, or we're trying to work with, um, the the relevant bodies that are representing us. So we're working with, or flight test was just in Europe, so we couldn't have a phone call with them. But there's going to be a phone call probably next week with flight test because they are building this community-based organization. We have talked to the FPV Freedom Coalition and figured out like ways how we could help there. But I mean, obviously, I have my apprehensions with certain people that are involved with the FPVFC. So that's kind of like it's on the balance. So that's what we're trying to do in terms of like lobbying. Um, on the other hand, we're obviously going to try to allow our customers to be compliant if they wish to do so. Um, that verdict is still out because we haven't received the um, the full rules yet and like the procedures that we would have to go through.
Right.
Um, yeah, that's pretty much all we can do at this point. Like, it's not like our little hobby of 100,000 people has any influence over rulemaking that is being guided by companies that are worth billions of dollars. Oh yeah, and AMA obviously. I, I think it was Rich Hansen, like the previous president of the AMA. He was super in favor of FPV. I don't know the current president, so I don't know if he is, but like every time we were out in multi GPIO, I reached out to that to Rich. I think it was Rich. I'm super bad with names. Um, he was the previous president of the AMA. Yeah, I can't find it on Google right now, but so yeah, obviously we talked to him, and I think being supporters of the multi GPIO has kind of influenced the perception of FPV within the AMA, because it's hosted at the AMA fields, so that's another thing that we're super proud of. But yeah.
Looks like a couple folks in the chat have had great experiences with the Tango 2, talking about they've went to pinch. They didn't think they were going to be comfortable with it, and they've found that they found it really ergonomic because the
Yeah,
gimbals are full size.
I think that's how the Tango 2 differentiates from any other remote. It's like we had, I, I don't know if I have any pictures to show, but like we started off with clay models. Um, so we had like a huge block of clay, and we shaped it and then kept like having people try it. So there was like a, a gimbal stick like punched into the clay model. And then we had people with different hand sizes and pinching styles and or grabbing styles hold them and then readjust continuously over like the course of like 6 to 12 months, just redoing clay model after clay model after clay model. And then once we had it at a certain shape, then we started integrating the electronics. Yeah. If you look at how other people are making remote controls, except for I think the FlySky Nirvana, it's mostly going with an existing design, and pretty much either copying that one to one, or just going with the electronics that you have and putting a shell on the outside of it. But nobody's really looked into the ergonomics and the size aspect as closely as TBS has on this. So I think that's why a lot of people are having really good success with the Tango 2.
Mr. Liquidano says, Trappy, I'm new to FPV and I just want to say I love your products. They work awesome. Thanks for your time and effort.
Thank you.
And Simon Saucy wants to know how long till the Tango 2 is supposed to be OpenTX?
That's not up to us. So we are obviously, like right now we have to fix Freedom TX so that it works, so that all the little bugs are gone, and that will then simplify merging it back into OpenTX. And we have started the discussion with OpenTX devs, and they're going to help us with the merging process, but it's not our timeline. And we're basically at the mercy of OpenTX and how they want to push forward. I mean, obviously they have their own things to worry about. The Tango 2 hasn't even been on their radar, because it has taken so long. Like I think we started talking to OpenTX before they were hired by FrSky, or we started the project with one OpenTX dev who then was hired by FrSky. That's the correct way of saying it. And then he obviously dropped that project. So yeah, it's been a while.
Cretan Perry would like to know, will the TBS ecosystem ever support a return to home feature from a wing perspective?
Well, we don't make flight controllers, and that's where the return to home would be at. But I think iNav does, right? Doesn't iNav support return to home?
Pretty sure.
I don't know. I don't use return to home.
So what was the most challenging thing with designing the Tango 2?
Just making it all fit. Like we started off with 18650 batteries, and that like took us, I think, like 4 to 5 months trying to figure out a way to put them in, but it didn't work. So then we changed to smaller, like the flat cell batteries, like that you have in your cell phones. And yeah, it was just like a continuous trying to get everything working and everything to fit in the shape that we had, right? Because we didn't want to change the shape, because we spent so much time on perfecting the shape that we were not willing to sacrifice like even just a millimeter on the height. So I don't know if people realize like the thickness of it all. Like if we decrease the thickness of the plastic shell by more than 0.3 millimeters, which is a third of a millimeter, then the gimbals are going to start scratching on the battery at the extreme positions. So
Wow. Jack Fu would like to know, how did Trappy and Steel come together?
Steel was our first sponsored pilot. Back when he had less than 1,000 subs, 5,000 views total. He just struck me as a really talented pilot, right? I didn't even know that he was the personality that he was, which is obviously like perfect for somebody to represent your brand if you're like as well spoken and intelligent and like while still being like goofy and I don't know, camera friendly, I would say. It's very rare that people have like all of these qualities, right? But like what like just blew me away was how quickly he progressed from like his skills and just how talented he was on the sticks. Yeah, so that's why we sponsored him.
He's very precise.
Yeah, I don't think people realize like he was not a race pilot, and the first drone race that he was at, in the first lap, he was 6 seconds faster on a 20-second course, or 18 seconds in his case. He was 6 seconds faster than the second fastest pilot during the training, right? And then obviously slowly people were like catching up to him, and eventually I think he finished second, not first. Yeah, well, he definitely didn't win because Chad Nowak won. But and Chad Nowak is obviously like he was, yeah, he's also like one of the best pilots in the world back then. But just like the immediate, how to say, like without practicing, without having iterations, like the immediate skill, it was just mind blowing to see.
You guys have been working together for quite a while now, too.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean the ethics thing came together when he left Rotor Riot, and yeah, it was I don't know how to say it, but it kind of changed the way that I see how we can support FPV pilots through this whole ethics venture that TBS started out with him. Because obviously it's allowed him, at least in part, to be completely autonomous and not have to work with other brands. Like I know people like claim that he is like only flying the stuff that I tell him to, or that TBS tells him to, which is absolutely not the case. So like ethics has allowed Steele to be, I think he is the most independent pilot, obviously apart from ethics. which doesn't make stuff that is really competing with any other big brands though. So
He makes what he wants to fly.
yeah, he's the whole mentality of Steel was is exactly the same as when TBS first started out. Like, he makes the stuff that is missing in his FPV life, like battery bags, goggle straps, lanyards, just all the crazy like earpieces or headphones or whatever, motors obviously, but he just makes the stuff that he wants that nobody else was willing to make for him. He just goes out and makes them by himself, or well, in collaboration with us.
I've really enjoyed seeing the innovation come from Ethics, and you can tell that so much work goes into those products. It's not just something that you came up with overnight.
Yeah, yeah, it's. I mean, once you see it, it makes sense. But if you look at it in detail, you know that how, and especially if you know how anal steel is, it's um, uh, sometimes it's frustrating to work with him because like I'm at the point where like, come on, man, this is good enough, and he's like, no, man, no, dude, got it.
Not
This
quite.
this has to be a different shade of black.
Quadrophenia asks, does Trappy still keep in contact with Snake, and how is he doing?
Snake is doing fine. He is. I think he's working now as a pilot. So
Sweet.
how to say, like, he flies drones commercially.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just one sec.
Double A says the battery bags are awesome. He loves his.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, heated battery. I'm guessing he means the heated one.
Yeah.
Nobody really thought about that. Like, I still remember like heating up the car just to get batteries warm in winter. And now all you got to do is charge an extra pack and just plug it in, put all your batteries in there, and they'll be warm for the day.
What's been the favorite product you've made in collaboration with Steel?
Um, I mean, obviously, it's going to be the motors because it was the most complex, and it's now in the third iteration. But a lot of things have been super fun just because they're new. Like, I like to work with fabrics because I don't get to do that on a daily basis. So like the goggle straps and the lanyards were pretty fun to make. Um, the battery bags were a little bit frustrating because it was just so many things coming together. Like, you had to make a PCB, you had to make the heating element, you had to like isolate it from like how do you say that the temperature doesn't escape. So all of these things is that was a little much, and it took pretty long time. But yeah, it's just the nature of it being completely different from what I'm doing on a daily basis is what's actually exciting to me. So there's not like one specific product.
Jack Fu wants to know what is the biggest moneymaker for TBS?
uh, I to be honest, like, I don't even know. I've never cared about um, my numbers. We have an accountant, and my direction to him is let me know if we're in the red, and he hasn't so far. So that's the extent to which I care about money. I let other people worry about that. Like, I make sure that I pay my taxes, and let him make sure that I pay my taxes and all that stuff. But I don't want to worry about money. I think worrying about money is extremely short-sighted. And if you care about like what makes most of your money as a boss, then you're not going to survive in this industry.
I think your care towards your employees would be sacrificed too, probably.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean, you gotta make sure that you can pay your bills, right? But it's more about, is the company on the right path, and is that vision that you have still going to be relevant in 3 to 5 years? That's what keeps me up at night. Not have I made, or is the Unify Pro making me more money than the Triumph Pro, or is the Nano RX more successful than the Diversity RX, or any of this stuff like doesn't really concern me, because at the end of the day, if you're in the black, then you can pay your salaries and you can keep the company going, and that's what matters. Everything else is just, I don't know. If I mean, if I was worried about money, I wouldn't be in this
You
industry.
wouldn't be in this business, yeah. You're
No.
not. You're. I don't. I would hate to say you're probably not getting rich from FPV, even though you are one of
Yeah.
the more successful businesses in the hobby.
No, I mean, the salary I have now is less than half of the starting salary that I was offered leaving university. Just
Example.
as an example, right? I mean, I come from Switzerland. I'm highly educated. Um, I could have worked for a bank and made bank, but that's not what I wanted in life. If you want to chase money, then go and chase money. Like, I don't know. To me, it's always more about just yeah, like Quad Farm says, doing what you love, so you don't have to work a single day of your life. That has always been the goal of mine, and I'm happy to say that I've achieved that. So
Hell yeah. What can we as an FPV community do to help TBS?
just support us. Just buy our gear, spread the word, and that's pretty much all I can ask for. Let us know if we fuck up. That's also really important, um, so that we can adjust quickly. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I know I'll keep supporting you.
Thank you.
Well, guys in the chat, let us know if you got any more questions. Otherwise, I guess we're going to call it a morning for Trappy. Says Jack Fu
There's
wants to know, with the freedom that comes from having a good team around you, where do you put your focus in TBS?
yeah, just like keep building that team. Like personally, the stuff that I work on, I work on. I'm I'm a like IT programmer and stuff like that, so I like to work on that. Um, when I'm actually doing like work for TBS, but everything else is about project management, just making sure that everybody has something to do, and that they're working towards the same, like the goal that I have in mind, or that we as the leaders, like Chris, Remo, and I had in mind for TBS. Um, that's what I work on. I'm not so much like people like try to attribute like products like the Tango 2 to me, but I'm just like I'm like Steve Jobs that just tells people what to do. Uh, and I know he gets a lot of credit for that shit too, but which I completely don't understand. Like, I don't. Um, but yeah, it's like when I actually do work, I do like super boring stuff, like warehouse management software, making sure that all the processes are aligned, um, stock management tools, and like purchase orders and invoice payments, like automating that stuff. Like that's what I do, which is super boring. Um, to most
Right.
people, but like it's exciting to me, right? Because I get to actually use some of the skills that I've acquired during my education days. Akira is asking for open positions. Yeah, just send us the CV. Trappy@gmail.com.
Sweet. All right. Well, I've
All
had
right,
a great night talking to you. I hope you have a good day today.
dude, it
Um,
was awesome, man.
Everybody check the description. We've got links to the Black Sheep YouTube and to the lounge. If you're not a member of the lounge on Facebook, you need to join up. It's one of the less like one of the most open places on Facebook. Everything's real smooth going in there. Not a whole lot of drama. You can come in there and chat up FPV and get to know some people, and everybody's just there for the love of it. So really recommend that Facebook group.
Thank you.
Just want to say thanks to Trappy for coming on. A little birdie told me we might have Mr. Steele next week. We'll see. We're still going to try to finalize that. So I'm in talks with him now, but hopefully we'll have him on next week. If not, we'll try to get him on sometime soon. And I just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already. We appreciate that. And just thank you from the bottom of our heart to everybody out there. Hope y'all enjoyed the stream and come back next Saturday at 9 p.m. for more.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Thanks everybody for watching.
Sweet. All right, on that note, we're out of here. See you guys.
Bye.